The Arizona Diamondbacks are shaking things up a little bit, making some important roster moves to try to light a fire under their players, and dare I say, it might be working. Thanks for checking out the Ain't No Fang Podcast. I'm Steve Zinsmeister with Alex Weiner, who covers the Diamondbacks for Arizona Sports. A couple major roster moves over the weekend, and we'll get to the weekend that was, which is actually a good turning point for the Diamondbacks in their season.
Wins.
Wins. It's been a while. 9 straight losses, followed by the 2 wins over the Padres. They win the series. Mm-hmm. They don't win the run differential in the series, but I digress. Some big roster moves, though. Gabriel Moreno is back, and he's getting worked back into the lineup slowly but surely, and that means the end of Carson Kelly as an Arizona Diamondback.
Yeah, that's right. They made 4 moves on Sunday. They made a couple of moves on Saturday, sending down Emmanuel Rivera for Buddy Kennedy, and then Sunday, Moreno comes back. They DFA Carson Kelly, and Torey Lovullo said he would be pretty surprised if Kelly clears waivers. He expects him to get another opportunity with a different team. I suppose it's still possible he could come back and get outrighted to AAA, but they're expecting him to be done. And then after that, Bryce Jarvis gets the call and Ryan Nelson goes down. So a lot of moving parts, starting with Moreno. He doesn't start in yesterday's game or in Sunday's game. Jose Herrera does, but he comes in, they pinch it for Herrera, which works out because Lourdes Gurriel hits the game-tying home run. Moreno comes in, and he has such a quintessential best-of hit for Gabriel Moreno, which is he's down 0-2 in the count, he shortens up, he just pokes the sharp ground ball into right field. The throw goes to third base, he takes the extra base. Doesn't end up scoring on it, but Christian Walker does, and because he took the extra base, that allowed there to be an open first base. And so when Jace Peterson got up 3-1, they put him on intentionally. Alec Thomas comes up, sacrifice fly, just put everything into motion. So he's already made an impact on the team. I guess we could talk about Carson Kelly era being over because that's it. Now everybody who was directly traded for Paul Goldschmidt is now no longer with the team, assuming that Kelly does in fact get picked up by another team.
That's Carson Kelly, that's Luke Weaver, that's Andrew Young, or Andy Young, formerly known as, all gone. And I think early expectations this season for the catcher position, because the writing is on the wall a little bit when you trade for a franchise catcher for the second time in the last 5-6 years. And I think that's kind of what they attempted to do in getting Gabby Moreno, who was the prized piece of that trade. Lourdes Gurriel ends up going to the All-Star game, too. Not a bad consolation prize. But I think the realistic expectation for the catcher position seemed to be that Kelly and Moreno could kind of tag team it this season, maybe even close to a 50-50 split. Remember we heard that line from
when he
Torey
got
Lovullo?
back. Yeah, when Kelly got healthy, definitely.
And for one reason or another, Carson Kelly just couldn't regain his footing at the major league level. He hit very well at Reno, if I remember right, on his rehabilitation tour.
Last couple of years, that's been the case. But yeah, he hasn't really hit since he got hurt in 21. The offense just hasn't been there since.
And Torey, admittedly, during his press conference when talking about this decision to let Carson go, I think he was very truthful in saying, we wanted to give him every opportunity to make it work, and the production just wasn't there. He did kind of say, these are discussions we've been having over the last few days. I think these are discussions that have been going on for quite some time. Maybe not the DFA conversation directly, but what are we going to do if Carson Kelly doesn't turn into the guy we're hoping he does? I mean, the Goldschmidt trade was years ago at this point. So if you hadn't have been having those discussions even before acquiring Moreno, then you're not doing your job. And so I think this is just kind of the culmination of something they didn't want to have happen, but ultimately they're making tough decisions this season.
Yeah, and it says a lot about what they feel about Jose Herrera, too, that they're just handing him the keys as the backup catcher, and they didn't have to get rid of Carson Kelly. There's no monetary reasons to do this now. If they wanted to bring back Moreno, send down Herrera again, and then just keep Kelly as the backup, they could have done that. But Herrera's been producing a bit more offensively than Kelly has this season and in parts of last season. So they just felt like those were the two guys. Yeah, I mean, Moreno's back. They were always going to have to make some sort of decision when he got back because they were never going to keep 3 catchers. But he gets back, Kelly goes down. So now, Diamondbacks fans have been clamoring to see more Moreno. And they're going to for the rest of the season. He's been out for a couple of weeks now. He's been dealing with a shoulder issue since before the All-Star break. Apparently, at least this is what Lovullo said and what he said, that there was no more pain when he got back and started to do his rehab assignments. And so it looks like they're getting 100% of Gabriel Moreno the rest of the way, which will be a huge help based on what he gave them early in the season defensively, and is just somebody who can get hits even if it's not a ton of power right now.
He's just an upgrade in every way. And one of the faults, I think, of Torey Lovello at times is giving guys days off, sometimes consecutive days off, and a lot of people throw their hands up like, why is our lineup not the best possible version of the lineup more consistently? And I understand that it's a difficult job to rotate guys in and out, to get guys rests at
Young
different
guys too.
times. Yeah, young guys in particular who are trying to find their footing at the major league level. And Moreno got thrown to the fire very early and had a lot of success very early when he was required to play almost every day, and Herrera sporadically. But I think that you've just gotten to the point now where one of the critiques I have for next season even is I want to see more of what you would call a quote unquote death lineup, the best possible version of the lineup more consistently. And I get it. Moreno's missed time, and so have other guys. Evan Longoria's missed time. Other players have missed time. Some of these guys were sent down to the minor leagues early in the season. So I understand that they've had many iterations of this lineup. It's just, I think with Moreno back, you finally start to see the best possible version of what this lineup can look like.
Sure. I mean, and they're in a situation where, you want to give guys rest throughout the season, but now you're at less than 50 games to go.
Crunch time.
You're in a playoff race. I know it felt like the world completely caved in on them when they lost 9 games in a row and they fell out of a wild card spot, and it was like, this is it. They're never going to win a game for the rest of the season. They're 2.5 games back. They play the Rockies this week. The Marlins, I think, have the Astros. Some of the teams that they're chasing have difficult series ahead. It's just about taking care of business against the teams that you're supposed to beat. If they could do that this weekend or this week, maybe they climb back into one of those spots. Maybe they get onto the doorstep, but they're still right there, and there's a ton to play for. So if you aren't putting the best possible version of yourself out there, and I think this was a big deal in the moves that they've made, then I think it's a little bit of a disservice. But for right now, yeah, it just feels like what we saw in their game on Sunday, that lineup, what it looked like, how they came together, that was the best version we've seen of the Diamondbacks in a few months, and maybe in a month and a half. And so now it's just about building on it.
Another move, another position of need, third base. Buddy Kennedy comes up. That's a guy that we're familiar with and who had a really hot start at AAA Reno this season. He gets the call up. Of course, he has to be added to the roster. Christian Robinson, a former top prospect, gets DFA'd. A lot of people probably forgot he was even on the 40-man roster because they were trying to protect him years ago, and then his legal situation over the last 2 or 3 seasons has just kind of thrown him in limbo. He gets DFA'd. Kind of like the Carson Kelly discussion. We don't know that he'll get picked up because my understanding is somebody would have to put him on their 40-man. I don't know that somebody wants to do that with a 22-year-old, I think he is, who's got the troubles that he's had and who's had some setbacks in playing time specifically. Emmanuel Rivera goes down to AAA. Third base is one of those positions where they've had a lot of different things happen this year. Josh Rojas at one point was hitting on some level very early, but then quieted down dramatically. Then Emmanuel Rivera gets into the mix. I thought he was hitting pretty well, at least early, cooled down dramatically as well. Evan Longoria gets injured, so they've had a lot of different things at third base. Buddy Kennedy, can he provide any more stability at that spot?
Probably not. Just, I mean, it's, Longoria, it's not a season-ending injury for him. It felt like Rivera, he was slumping. I think he was 0 for 18 or something like that. Hadn't gotten a hit in a few starts. So for him, it's just a reset. I mean, he's gone through stretches where he's been one of their better offensive hitters, or at least one of their better consistent offensive hitters. So send him down for a reset. Bring up Kennedy, who was deserving of the opportunity. I mean, he all season, after he got a cup of coffee last year, he had that great grand slam in front of his grandfather and gets sent back down, starts the season in AAA, isn't on the 40-man roster, makes his way back up. That's great. But I think it's mostly a placeholder situation for Longoria to come back. And then it'll be a platoon with Peterson and Longoria.
The call-up of Bryce Jarvis, former high draft pick, has been in Reno for a while. He's one of those names, kind of like Slade Ciccone, who recently came up for the first time, where they were just kind of waiting for that opportunity. Wasn't necessarily killing it in Reno, although it's hard to kill it in Reno when you're a pitcher. Only Brandon Pfaadt really has achieved that level. But it's another name. He gets called up. He's going to be in the bullpen, not necessarily a starter for now, although he's said as much as that they hope to use him as a starter in the future, like next season probably. So with Bryce Jarvis up, Ryan Nelson down, which is probably even the bigger headline because of the confidence that the organization has shown in him despite the up and downs that he's had this season. I think I read Ryan Nelson is leading the league in earned runs against, which is certainly not a category you want to be first place in. And so after showing so much confidence in Ryan Nelson, because there's been so much fluctuation in the rotation with other positions, Bryce Jarvis comes up. Where does that leave the starting rotation?
Short. Going into a week of games where they're on the road. It starts with the 3 games against the Rockies. I guess we'll start there. It's Merrill Kelly, and then, I mean, for them, their probables are TBA. Now, my guess is that we're going to see a bullpen game in there. John Gambadoro from Arizona Sports tweeted that he expects to see a bullpen game in there. Slade Ciccone probably is the option there. And then you can kind of reset it with, Gallen and Fott, and then move on, and Kelly again. But it's interesting moves because Nelson, as we've talked about this before, is he was the one guy out of the youngsters who had not had a stint in AAA this year. Tommy Henry starts the year in AAA, he comes up. Dre Jameson starts in the bullpen, goes to the rotation, gets set back down, comes back up, is back in the bullpen. And, Fott, up and down a couple of times. Ciccone just got up here. Jarvis just gets here. So Nelson was the one guy, and with him and Gallen, those are the only 2 pitchers who had 24 starts by the time that Nelson got sent back down. It's just been, you're right, it's been an inconsistency, especially landing the off-speed stuff, getting swings and misses. I mean, this is a guy with a fastball that can hit 96 with a slider changeup combination that, it's when you watch him pitch, it's just sort of like, why aren't they swinging and missing at some of these pitches? And so Lovullo was very blunt in saying, like, he's got to go down and work on the slider shape, try to find a little bit more consistency with the off-speed stuff. But they want him to come back and be part of the rotation for the final stretch of the season. I'm not sure how long this sabbatical is going to take, but they need him to figure a couple of things out because we've seen a very good version of Ryan Nelson in a handful of stretches. That Giant start comes to mind. He had a great start against the Tigers when I think Lovullo said his back was against the wall, like another bad start or 2, he would have got sent back down. So it's happened before where they were thinking about this move and he bounced back. And then this last 4-start stretch hasn't been able to do that. So down he goes and it leaves them a man short. Jarvis is interesting because he's been a starter his entire time there. First round pick in 2020, doesn't get to pitch in 2020 in the pros, so his first season is in 2021, and he gets all the way up to AA in his first professional season, and then stalls out, the walks piled up on him, went on the IL a couple of times, started back in AA this season, goes up to AAA, pitches pretty well for them, but he said that in order to make a more immediate impact on this team and make the major leagues, he had to make that adjustment to the bullpen. And so he's a guy who can give them 2 innings. It doesn't sound like he's going longer than 2 in any of these appearances, but especially this week, they're going to have a bullpen game. He could be a guy who can give you a little bit of length potentially with somebody like Tyler Gilbert. I'm not sure who else will be pitching that game. It depends on how the other 2 games go, but it's an interesting option, and it's sort of an interesting strategy to bring him up in the bullpen first, and I'm curious if he sticks there.
Yeah, I'm not so sure I'm surprised by it because you're organizationally, in terms of prospects that you had in the starting pitching realm, most of them were sitting in Reno, or at least the really good ones. The Blake Walstons, Brandon Fott at the beginning of the season, Ciccone, and now Bryce Jarvis, all kind of sitting there. Walston's the only one that hasn't made a major league appearance. I don't know. He's also, if I remember right, he's one of the younger ones, so there could be some time there. But with that said, you kind of have to figure out, what are these guys? We can't just stash them all in AAA for 2-3 seasons, and then we get to the point where, we haven't really tried enough of these guys. And the Diamondbacks are going through enough struggles in terms of injuries. Tommy Henry's been hurt. Merrill Kelly's been hurt at times. Zach Davies has been gone. So when you go through things like that and 60% of your rotation is already rookies, there's plenty of opportunity, I guess, is the point. And so to see them bringing up so many guys, with consistency, whether it's Fott, whether it's Ciccone, and now Jarvis, I'm not surprised by that. I mean, they kind of had to figure out this season what some of these guys have to offer and how they contribute to future seasons, especially when there's opportunities in the bullpen moving forward. We've seen this organization turn plenty of starters into valuable relievers in the past.
Yeah, and it's sort of interesting just with the draft strategy and the development that we've seen under this regime. It's like they piled up on these college arms over the 2019 and 2020 and 2021, and now we're seeing the 2020 guys make it with Jarvis and Fott and Ciccone. Those were 3 of the 6 guys that they drafted that year. Nelson and Jameson, those and Henry, which were the 2019 guys, and they all made it up last year. And so it says a lot that these guys are making it this high. It's not been gangbusters for anybody in particular there, but we're starting to see some growth out of Fott. We'll talk about that performance and about just how they looked over the weekend in general in a bit. But it's sort of interesting, like, peek into where they are as far as sort of a roster construction situation. And then in this past draft, they go heavy on college relief arms, potentially that could help sooner rather than later as well.
So let's move to that conversation that you're talking about then. Over the weekend, you get 2 wins out of 3 against the San Diego Padres, a team that, while as talented as they might be, just seems to be floundering this season. And so you take 2 of 3, you get a lockdown start out of Zach Gallen, one that, you've come to expect it almost, but at the same time, the way this team had been playing.
They haven't won with him starting in a while.
That's the thing.
4 starts, yeah.
That's the thing. So you get that start, which was great, and then you talk about Brandon Pfaadt, who I think has really turned a corner. I mean, don't look at the periphery statistics because the ERA is still going to be high.
Right.
He's still giving up home runs at a pretty decent clip, but he has figured some things out so far.
Absolutely, yeah. Just dialing in on Pfaadt. I mean, so in his first stint, I think it was his first 5-run stint, he always got crushed in like this one inning where it just got away, and I felt like it just couldn't get out of it. The location struggled. He was missing over the middle too much. Major league hitters were crushing it. He comes back up for one start, kind of the same deal happens. But he said he's felt like he's been in more control since coming back up the most recent time. He had a great start in Cincinnati where it was 5 scoreless innings until the end of that start where he gives up 3 solo home runs in the 6th, and he still leaves with a quality start, but it was better than what the final numbers were. Even like last week against the Dodgers, I think it was like 4 2/3, 4 earned runs, but he got clipped a couple of times on a couple of not so hard hit balls that it was probably a better performance than the numbers state. And so for him to struggle early against the Padres and then come back out and throw 4 2/3 shutout innings, 8 strikeouts, a new career high against a team that, like you said, tons of talent. I mean, you still have to go through Juan Soto, Fernando Tatis, Manny Machado, Xander Bogaerts, Jake Cronenworth all in a row. And even Gary Sanchez.
They added tons of pieces at the deadline, too. Garrett
Ha-Seong
Cooper's
Kim
not a bad hitter.
Like the best player for some reason.
Yeah. No.
So to go through that and keep them in the game, a game that, rubber match. They scored 1 early to bounce back after that first inning, but he needed to keep them in the game, and he was able to do that. That showed a lot of maturity, I thought.
It puts the Diamondbacks in this interesting scenario because they lost 9 in a row before this. Before this weekend, they only had 5 wins since the All-Star break. That's almost a month ago, or by now it is a month ago. And so 2 wins by no means puts you back on the rails. It doesn't put you back necessarily where you were a month and a half ago.
It's so nice to say they're back, though, right?
Well, I mean, yeah, it comes with context, though, right?
Yeah, everything does, yeah.
And so 2 wins is a good start. And then you're only 2.5 games back of a wild card. Philadelphia, San Francisco, and Miami currently sitting in the wild card positions. The Chicago Cubs and the Cincinnati Reds are only half a game back. That puts the Diamondbacks 2.5 back. San Diego is 5.5 back. You've got a bunch more games against the Padres coming up in the next 4. Yeah, 4 more games in the next couple of weeks.
3 against the Rockies, 4 against the Padres. Yeah.
So you've got a real opportunity here to capitalize on the momentum. And if they're able to figure out the starting pitching aspect of all of this, you could see the Diamondbacks add a couple of games to their separation between them and the Padres, further putting them in the conversation for wild card and taking the Padres out of it.
Yeah, and it's huge. I mean, you're going up against the teams that you're either chasing or who are chasing you. They come back here and they play the Reds in their very next homestand. That's a huge series. The Reds swept them at Great American Ballpark, but then they'll come to Chase Field next week. They get the Rangers and then the Reds. So you're right. These are massive games. I mean, the Padres, going into this series, there was 2 games separating them. If the Padres had just swept them, like the losing streak continues to this day, we have the doomsday conversations, like, oh, so just bring up guys just to give them experience and all that kind of stuff. It felt that would have felt like oh, how could they even surpass the Padres at this point based on what the two teams are playing? The Padres have now lost 6 out of 7 games, I think. And while the Diamondbacks, 2 games is 2 games, they looked a lot more like I called it like a win reminiscent of early season Diamondbacks on Sunday. Just how they were able to rally late, play really clean baseball, take advantage on the base paths, minus the Herrera getting thrown out at second base on the pass ball. Great play by Gary Sanchez, by the way. So to kind of be in this position instead of that more dire one, I think it's big not only just for what the team looks like and just its morale and everyone's sanity, but also just to put yourself in a position where, like, by the end of next week, if they have a good series against the Padres, if they have a good series against the Reds, where they're like right back like in there, they could be charging at the Marlins potentially for that third spot. I think it's like right now it's like 5 teams for 3 spots would be, or for 1 spot would be my guess, just because, you know, the Giants haven't been great lately, but it feels like the Giants and the Phillies are gaining some separation at the top a little bit. So, I mean, anything you can get against the teams that are trailing you or that you are trailing. I mean, this is it. Like, this is the push right now.
So that's the major league conversation. There is a minor league conversation to be had here in that there's a little bit of excitement around Diamondback's super prospect, Jordan Lawler, shortstop. I think he was recently ranked in the top 10 prospects again. He's their number 1 far and away.
Yeah.
He gets promoted to AAA Reno. Hit pretty darn well in AA. I think he was in the 260s in terms of batting average, but everything else was really, really impressive.
His last month or 2 months have been spectacular too.
Yeah, I mean, this is a top-notch prospect. I watched him in the Fall League last year. I watched him hit a home run in the exhibition game that they played at Chase Field before the season started. So this guy's as legit as they come. He's finally up in AAA. It's starting to feel kind of like what they went through with Corbin Carroll last year, where Corbin played the majority of the season in AA, got called up to AAA, played for Reno for, I don't remember how long it was. It might have been a month and a half. And then he got a call up late in the season. So I'll ask you, is there any chance that Jordan Lawler makes it to the major leagues by the end of this season?
Probably not, would be my guess. Just because, I mean, Corbin was a little further along, just as far as like when he got called up to AAA. He made his major league debut at the end of August. We're in the middle of August. This, you know, Lawler put this on his Instagram story. His agent put it on his Instagram story, but it's not even like an official move yet. So I wouldn't think so, just with how much time they have left. And, you know, last year they were also in a position where they weren't in the hunt. So bringing up some younger guys to get experience, you know, Corbin was ready, so that's a little bit different. But they had a pretty young roster by the end of the season. Bringing up guys like Dre Jameson and Ryan Nelson and Tommy Henry, and now they're in a playoff push. If Lawler just absolutely crushes it in AAA and is terrific for 2 weeks, and it's maybe somebody gets hurt, then you can maybe start having these conversations. But yeah, let's see what he does in AAA first would be my answer to that.
I'm willing to bet he'll be okay in AAA.
I would think so too, but we'll see.
It's kind of a hitter's environment to begin with, and he's spectacular. Speaking about prospects, MLB Pipeline has new rankings out for each individual organization as well as the league in total. If you focus in on the Diamondbacks, they have had some things shift and change over the course of year to year. One of the big things that they do is they add in the guys who were recently drafted. So you're inevitably going to get your first 3 round picks are going to move into the top rankings of your organization. Some of the guys who are injured inevitably will move down. Is there any new name that you're seeing rocketing up the list that people should know for the future?
Yeah, well, I mean, with the latest draft class, so they started Tommy Troy and Gino Groover. That's their first 2 picks in High A with Hillsborough. And so, you know, they drafted college bats. And that's sort of what you're getting there is guys who are going to be a little bit further along than, let's say, Drew Jones, who started in Low A, and obviously he's had a ton of the injuries, and it's been, you know, he's working his way back to getting onto a minor league field again. But yeah, Tommy Troy and Gino Groover, so far so good with the hops. So just those are guys that keep an eye out for this year. We'll see next year if they start in AA. That could be, you know, those are 2 guys who, you know, who could they help out the team in 2025? Maybe. We'll see him soon, but it's possible. Yumin Lin would be the guy who's like been in their minor league system for a few years now, who climbed up to number 4 on these rankings. And look, rankings are rankings. It's, it's subjective stuff. But at the same time, he's been pretty lights out throughout most of the season. Started in high A, works his way to double A, left-handed starting pitcher from Taiwan. I mean,
something they don't have a lot
of. Their top pitching prospect right now in these rankings, and he's performed like it. He was really excellent in Hillsborough. He was the pitcher of the month for them, for the Diamondback system. Goes up to Amarillo. 4.5 ERA, but it's Amarillo. I mean, ultimately, he's striking out, more than 9 per 9 innings. They're hitting 200 against him. He's pitching quite well. So that would be the one who also stands out.
A lot of nostalgia at the ballpark over the last couple of games. The 25th anniversary situation with the Diamondbacks, where they bring back a ton of old names. And it's funny to go through the history of the organization, because this is still one of the youngest franchises in all of baseball. And yet there is a lot of history there already.
There's no black and white footage of them.
No, you're not going to find any of that. There's nobody playing in the 1880s in purple and teal. But speaking of purple and teal, Zach Gallen, the team's ace, kind of made a few headlines and made a lot of people happy by tweeting out that he prefers the purple uniforms to the Sedona Reds, even going as far as to suggest that they should be wearing them more often. And I even saw he put out a poll on what is now called X, or Twitter, basically saying, should we wear purple or should we go back to the red? Like, which one do you like? And the last time I looked at it, it was insanely high for the purple and teal. The fans love the purple and teal.
Absolutely.
So I think he made a couple extra fans happy over the weekend.
Yeah, and I get it. Like, that's the first, colors that they came out when they were first franchised. They won the World Series wearing teal and purple, and it's been not their primary jersey since 2007. They moved to the red, and they've had a couple versions of the red without going back to the purple. So it was cool to see the jerseys out in the field again and seeing some of the 90s like graphics and all that kind of stuff. That's it, though. I mean, they're going to be back in the red for the rest of the season. It's funny with Nike's deal with MLB, they only get like 4 jerseys plus the City Connect, but they make some exceptions, and that was one of the exceptions. It's like, but what if they just have like a flashback Fridays, like the Marlins? Then they wear their teal jerseys. Shouts to Jeremy behind the cameras, by the way. With the Marlins, when they wear their teal jerseys, it's just more fun to watch them, just because there's the nostalgia. It's a great color. It looks great on the players. So I don't know. I would be down for something like that, even if it's not like permanently the purple and teal, as much as a lot of fans would love that. Yeah, no, I mean, they're not going to go back to it full time, that's for sure. But it is a good look. And honestly, Corbin Carroll, when he wears that uniform, he looks to me like a player from the 80s. Like, just with kind of like the facial hair that he's got, the long hair, and he doesn't play like anybody that I recall from the 80s. He's pretty individualistic. But let's take a look at the schedule as they head into their next series. Colorado for 3 games, in Denver. Then you talked about the 4-game series against the San Diego Padres. So there's obviously a lot of weight over the next 7 games on that road trip. They do get Texas for 2 games, and then Cincinnati and LA after that. So there is a really rough stretch at the end of August, early September for the Diamondbacks. So the next 7 games might carry that much more importance for them, because they're not going to catch a break after that. No, they have one of the most difficult schedules for the rest of the season. I mean, they still have Baltimore on their schedule. I mean, they'll play the Cubs in a 4-game series in early September. I mean, that's another team that they're going to be chasing, but they actually play at the Cubs for 2 series in September. They still got the Giants one more time. They're at the Yankees. They have the Astros to end the season. So, like, if they're a game back or a game up in the wild card and they have 3 games against the Astros at the very end of the season, we'll see what kind of incentive the Astros have to win at that point. It's a tough pull. It's a tough pull. I mean, it's a very, very difficult schedule down the road. I mean, them and the Padres kind of both have really, really tough schedules. We'll see. I mean, you gotta beat these teams in order to get to where they want to go. They want to play competitive baseball in September. It still looks like that can happen, but if they go on another losing streak, it may not happen. So they gotta keep it going and beat the teams they should. 3-game series in Colorado. Go win 2 out of the 3. That's all really you can ask for. Yeah, listen, 2 games is a great start. It's the beginning of starting to turn things around, certainly not the end. But this is a real opportunity over the next week or so for the Diamondbacks. Yeah, we didn't record during the 9-game losing streak, so maybe we actively avoided it. We're total front runners on this podcast, but right. I think we did like a was a trade deadline show.
We did a trade deadline show.
They had just beaten the Giants to open up the 4-game series, and then they just didn't win again until we're like, all right, let's record on this day and start winning again. So there you go.
It just happened because of scheduling, I think. But we like to talk during win streaks, which don't come all that often anymore.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks so much for checking out the podcast this week. For my friend Alex Weiner, covers the team at ArizonaSports.com. I'm Steve Zinsmeister. You've been listening to the Ain't No Fang Podcast for Arizona Sports.